is LBC.
Morning, 3 minutes after 9, Monday, June the 14th. In the studio with me to take your calls, the leader of the Labour Party, Sir Keir Starmer. We are, of course, suitably socially distanced, observing all the necessary etiquette. And if I've come to learn anything, Sir Keir, in the privilege I've had of talking to you over these last, 10, 11 months or so we've been working together, you're a man who loves his football. And there's a lot to discuss. Where do you want to start? The England result?
Nick, good morning.
Morning, sir.
It's fantastic to see you. The England result, it's always good to see England win and win their opening game. And so I was very pleased.
You just pointed out to me, that's quite a rarity.
Yeah, normally we go into the competition full of hope, of course, and then usually stall on the first game. But a great victory. Actually, Foden hit the post in the first few minutes. Fantastic. I think he's a fantastic player, by the way. I thought in the first 20 minutes it was really going to open up, but it was a bit harder than that. But fantastic through ball, fantastic goal.
Good. Where were you watching?
I was watching in the pub with a bunch of people I'd just played football with in the midday sun because we play every Sunday. So we went straight from our pitch into the pub to watch the game, and 1-0, we'll take that any day.
Had you enjoyed a victory, by the way, yourself, you and your team?
I wish you hadn't asked that. It was a draw with about 10 minutes to go, and then the sun sort of came down and my team wilted and we lost by a goal.
Oh, very disappointing. Now, I remember seeing a picture a couple of weeks ago. You perhaps, is the expression blowing rather hard during a football match there? I have concerns. You're not concerned about your fitness running around a football field?
I'm not worried about my fitness on the football pitch. But of course, how you play in your head is sometimes different to how you play on the pitch.
Fitness of somebody came into question, poor bloke, on Saturday. The BBC finds itself under fire, Sir Keir, in that it allowed the host broadcaster that were pumping the pictures from Denmark. So, of course, they weren't calling the shots there, but they could have cut away. Many people feel they could have cut to the studio, Gary Lineker and his team.
Yeah, I watched this live, Nick, and it was awful. It was really awful because you as a football fan, you just love football. You're watching it; it's brilliant. Players at the top of their game, and then suddenly something like that happens. And there are those rare occasions where you know it's serious from the start. The players' expressions who are on the pitch, the fans' expressions, it becomes very sombre very, very quickly. And I really feared the worst. I thought I was watching something that I really, no football fan ever wants to watch. I thought they could have cut away sooner, and I think his partner came onto the pitch at one point, and I don't know why they had the cameras on her at all. But no football fan wants to see that. I mean, I was hoping against hope that he would be all right, and of course, in the end, it was incredible. When I heard the news later on that he was alive and that he was awake, there was real relief.
Yes.
I think every genuine football fan would have been relieved, and nobody wants to see that.
But they could have cut earlier.
They could have cut earlier. They should have cut earlier, and I don't think they certainly shouldn't have shown his partner. I mean, how distressing is that?
Let's stay with sport for your first question, Sir Keir. It's Hugh in Ealing. Hugh, you're through to Sir Keir Starmer. Go ahead. Morning to you, Hugh.
Hi, Hugh.
Good morning.
Hi, Hugh.
Good morning. How are you?
Yeah, very good, thanks.
Yeah. My question's about Ollie Robinson's situation. As a black man, I feel it's obvious to me the harm that can be caused by the comments he made. I'm 63 years old. I'm born in this country. I've seen racism, right? But I'm a little bit disappointed to hear the ECB suspended him. Almost like it's just been, washed under the carpet. Couldn't they put him into work to help children, going around schools helping children see how he's changed?
Your line's dropping in and out. Hugh, stay on the line. If you just remind, Ollie Robinson is the professional cricketer who has been suspended from the England team pending an investigation into racist tweets. They date back sometime to 2012, 2013, when he, Mr. Robinson, was aged 18 and 19 and playing second-team cricket. They emerged on the day that he had a tremendous day's cricket at Lord's in his debut test, but sadly, obviously, he was not due for selection for the next test. Sir Keir?
Yeah, Hugh, thanks for raising that. I haven't seen all of the stuff that Ollie put out, but from what I've seen, it is the sort of stuff that can't be tolerated in any circumstances, and I think the Cricket Board had to take action. I acknowledge it was a while ago, but when things are that offensive and racist, I think action has to be taken, and I wouldn't interfere with the Cricket Board on this particular one. I understand, obviously, these are always difficult cases, but I think the Cricket Board had to act, and they were right to do so.
despite this being written by him when he was a teenager, as the Culture Secretary said, Ollie Robinson's tweets were offensive and wrong. They were also a decade old and written by a teenager. And the Prime Minister saying the ECB, that's the England and Wales Cricket Board, needs to, quote, think again.
Yeah, I get that it was a while ago. I get that he was young at the time, and I haven't seen everything, but from what I've seen, I think you can't just walk past that sort of thing, and action has to be taken. Now, it needs to be resolved. Obviously, the Cricket Board need to make final decisions on it, but I would leave it to them on this one.
OK, so you are responsible for something you write as a teenager?
You are, but, I mean, it's like all these things. As time goes by, it does make a difference. The younger you are, it makes a difference. I think he was over 18 rather than under 18. If I'm wrong about that, I'll be corrected.
18 and 19 at the time,
yeah,
so both.
Obviously, there's a difference if someone is under 18.
So if he was 17, that would have been all right?
Well, we tend to treat people as becoming adults when they're 18. Obviously, in a sense, that birthday is an important one in so many respects. But what people do when they're under 18, I think we do take and look at differently on a range of fronts, whether it's what they put out in terms of expressions and what they say or what they do. You know, when having worked in the criminal justice system for many years, we've always recognise that if you're under 18, there are different circumstances in play.
One rule for them and one rule for another. I remind you stood by your Hartlepool candidate, Dr. Paul Williams, who talked about Tory MILFs. I won't explain what that is, but you know what that is. So that was all right, was it?
Well, Nick, as I say, I haven't seen everything that Ollie's put out, and I don't want to prejudge this because I really haven't seen everything.
But your candidate can use the word MILF, and this man can't. This man is effectively guilty, aged 18 and 19.
Nick,
interesting priorities, Sir Keir.
I think, the Cricket Board had to take a decision. They've taken a decision on it.
All right, OK, thank you. Hugh, be well. I'm sorry we couldn't hear the line as clear as you could. Have a good day. Ashish in Croydon, you're on the radio. Good morning, Ashish.
Good morning. I just wanted to
Ashish.
ask... Hi, good morning. I just wanted to ask Mr. Starmer if he thinks the campaign to remove a portrait of Queen Elizabeth from one of the rooms of Oxford University is correct.
The middle common room of Magdalen.
It's Magdalen, isn't it? I think,
yeah, Magdalen, that's right. Or is it political correctness gone too far? Bearing in mind, in the last year, we've had calls for Nelson and Churchill's statue to be removed.
Yes.
We've had Chaucer removed from university syllabus because he's too white. We've had even calls for the film Grease not to be shown over Christmas because there's no ethnic characters in it. Do you think this rising tide of wokeness and political correctness is now just going too far?
Sir Keir.
Ashish, look, I wouldn't have voted to have this removed. I think it's perfectly good to have a picture of the Queen. I've worked in rooms with pictures of the Queens all my life, really. So I wouldn't have voted for it or had anything to do with it. On the other hand, as far as I understand, it's a student common room. It's their room, and presumably it's up to them to decide what they want to have in their room. But I don't agree with it. I wouldn't have done it. But in the end, I guess students are allowed to decide what they want hanging in the room that their common room, which is, I think, where they sort of spend a lot of time.
So the Education Secretary said it was absurd.
Yeah, I mean, I don't agree with it. It's the wrong thing to do. But as I say, there's a bit of me that thinks that if students have got a common room, it's up to them how they want it decorated and how
so they
and laid
can
out.
go ahead and take down a picture of the Queen.
I think it's quite something for us to say, no, you can't decide for yourselves what is in your own common room. But
is it not the role of the Chancellor here to say, look, I respect your vote, but it happens to be the sovereign?
Well, possibly, Nick. But I mean, this is common rooms, as I recall, are just the sort of room where students muck about. It's their own room. It's the room that's designated to them to do what they want to do, and it's not a stateroom in the college.
In that room,
I don't agree with it. I wouldn't have done it, but there's a bit of me that says that if it's their common room, they're entitled to decide what's displayed and what isn't.
Okay, Ashish, thank you. Rachel in Leicester, you're on the radio. Rachel, good morning.
I know. Hello, good morning.
Hi, Rachel. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Keir. It's a pleasure to be speaking to you.
Not at all.
I'm ringing about the recent decision to release Colin Pitchfork on his the parole board has given the decision
this
that
is
he's
local
fit.
to you because he struck
Very
it.
local to me. Yeah. I grew up in the
Sorry,
villages.
just give me 1 second, because I know you know it, but it's for my benefit. I'm so sorry. This was Colin Pitchfork. He was jailed for life back in 1998. He raped and strangled two 15-year-old girls, roughly 3 years apart. Back to you, Rachel. That was to remind my listeners. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So when the first murder happened, I was 10 years old, and the second, I was 13. And by the time he got caught, I was 14 years old. And the effect it had on the community was enormous, and still is enormous on everybody that is still living in the villages of New Dawn, New Linda, Dawn Ashworth and Linda Mann. Yeah, and I went to school with Dawn Ashworth, and so it was very, it was very, very, obviously it's shadowed my childhood, it shadowed everybody else's childhood that lived around the time, and also has affected me massively as a mother of two daughters.
Okay. So this is the parole board decision then that you're asking Sir Keir about. Is that right? Because they've recommended him. Yeah. So I'm basically asking, what does he feel about this? Does he think it's right? Okay. Obviously, with the recent cuts with our current government, how will these restrictions that he's going to be given? How will they make sure that they're being watched, basically? Okay. Well, very live issue in Leicester, I imagine.
Yeah, Rachel, thank you for raising this, and also just sharing with us your personal experience of it, because that always has to be the starting point, which is with the victims, their families, and by the communities that are also deeply affected by these things. When I was running the Crown Prosecution Service, when I was Director of Public Prosecutions, we obviously prosecuted many cases, and I met lots of families who'd been through the most awful circumstances, and there's nothing that is more important than hearing what they have to say and the impact it's had on their lives and has on yourself and others. So we start there, and all of our thoughts still with the families and all those affected by this. He has served a long sentence, and he served the sentence that was imposed on him by the court, and under our system that means there comes a point at which he has to be released. That doesn't make it any easier for you, it doesn't make it any easier for the families. And, as politicians, I think the best thing to do, there's a great tendency politicians sort of leap in on a particular case. Actually, if we think the system is wrong or the sentences are wrong in general, we should change the law on sentencing and look at whether there should be longer sentences in some of these cases. But Rachel, I can just hear through you, even this morning, the impact after all these years it's had. And I think you said you've got two young girls, which I can imagine.
I'm the most paranoid mother ever. They have to give me check-ins of where they are, whether they're with friends. I've had to explain to my daughters why I am the way I am.
Rachel, do you think this man deserves parole?
Me? No, I absolutely don't. Right. I think he should. He's killed two young, they're children. They're 15.
Yeah.
He's brutally raped, murdered, and thought he got away with the first one. Apparently he almost got a second before the third, but she got away. And of course
he was the first murderer to be convicted using DNA. So it is a yes or no. Does this man qualify for parole, Sir Keir?
Well, he qualifies because the law says he does.
But is it right? I understand the Justice Secretary, you know better than I. He can call it in, can't he? Rob Buckland couldn't call it in. He has a set period in which he can do that. Should he?
Well, I don't know whether Rob Buckland will call this in or
should
not.
He?
Possibly he should have another look at it. Possibly he should have another look at it.
Why possibly, Sir Keir?
Well,
either it's a yes or a no.
Because this is a terrible case, a really terrible case. And don't get me wrong, I dedicated a lot of my life to prosecuting cases like this, so I'm very tough on this.
But that's why you're in the crosshairs of my questioning. I can't allow possibly from you on this, Sir Keir. It's a yes or a no for the Justice Secretary.
But he should have another look at it.
That means call it in.
Call it in.
OK, thank you for that. Rachel, don't blame yourself for being such an attentive mum. I'm sure the girls will learn to understand why, and they will appreciate it. Rachel, thank you. Alex in Watford, you're on the radio. Your question, to Sir Keir. Good morning.
Hi, Alex.
Good morning, Sir Keir. Good morning, Nick.
Hello, sir.
Hello. What is your advice to Andrew Lloyd Webber this morning, please?
I think this is in context to Lord Lloyd Webber has £6 million staked on an upcoming production of Cinderella. He's made it pretty plain. It doesn't add up numbers-wise to play to 50% house. He needs 100%, and he said, come hell, high water, or whatever the Prime Minister says, he's opening up, and he's ready to get nicked former DPP, Sir Keir Starmer.
Well, look, isn't there a collective frustration about this? Here we are. June 21st was supposed to be Freedom Day. And why are we not going to hit it? And it looks like we're not. Answer, because of the government's pathetic borders policy. Absolutely pathetic. They didn't introduce hotel quarantining until, I think, February of this year, and then only 1%. Then we went through this ridiculous red, amber, green, where loads of countries were moved to the amber list. On the beginning of that, they're told, well, that means you can sort of go on holiday there. Then it's suddenly, no, it doesn't. It's only if it's absolutely essential. Then you get another member of the government popping up saying, well, I think holidays are essential. Nobody knows where they are on that. And then the inexplicable delay from the 9th, I think, to the 23rd of April, and putting India onto the red list with lots of people coming in. And then on top of all of that, mixing at, I think, Heathrow Airport of people on red lists and green lists. Pathetic. And
is
so
that why we find ourselves
that is
where
why we are here. The Delta variant has got in because of the government's pathetic control of the borders. Why on earth did they delay in relation to putting India on the red list? Why on earth the ridiculous amber system?
When you ask this in the House, of course, you're told, but they were on the amber list. They had to go to government-approved hotels. How I have to put that to you. How do you respond?
Well, look, of course that's tough. And you know, every time I raise this with the Prime Minister, he says, you know, rubbish, freedom, businesses. What the net result of his pathetic approach is that we're going to have 4 weeks more of this. Now, he needs to go and tell those businesses that he was saying he's going to open up. He's not going to have a strong borders policy, apparently because he wants businesses to thrive. What's he done? He's ended up with businesses now going to have to face, I think, probably 4 weeks, I hope not, of further restrictions. And it's not just businesses. There are people who have planned their weddings. Quite often, people who are going to get married in the next few months have put it off a number of times already. I hope there's some wriggle room tonight when the Prime Minister speaks.
It's been indicated that there might be.
I really hope there is. You know, whether it's 30, I think, at the moment, so it could go unlimited. There must be something in the middle here that we can do for people.
My listeners get rather distressed, Sir Keir, and we reference football, and I'm delighted that 20-odd thousand people go to Wembley. I'd love it to be all 80,000. 17,000 people go to Edgbaston for the cricket, and people are seen on the beach. But you can't have, one of my callers today, you can't have 90 people in an open-air wedding. It seems extraordinarily mixed.
Yeah, I think, look, we've got... I mean, I do hope the Prime Minister will look at weddings again, and I think across the House there'll be support for that. But, you know, let's not beat about the bush. The Delta variant is why we're not going to open up on the 21st of June, I don't think, and that is rampant because of the pathetic border policy of the government, I'm afraid, and there are just too many amateur mistakes along the way.
And back to Lord Lloyd Webber, your advice to him with Cinderella.
I have to tell him.
Because he says he's going to go ahead.
I have to tell him to obey the rules and obey the law. Of course I do. But I do understand the frustration. And it, you know, that's an example. But there are many businesses that have been, you know, really under the cosh now, and made all the plans to open up, and it almost certainly won't happen. And they should all get on the phone to the Prime Minister and tell him what they think.
And just lastly on this, the government has said there will be a vote on the delaying of the lifting of restrictions. Given the level of dissent from people such as Sir Ian Duncan Smith and others who lead the sort of angry brigade of the Conservatives, what will you tell your colleagues?
Well, we'll wait and see what the vote is, Nick, as ever. I'm talking to Chris Whitty and Patrick Vallance this morning, and that is something... I've just criticised the Prime Minister robustly for his pathetic response here. He has allowed me access to the government experts before these major decisions are taken, and I take that opportunity, and I've got an hour with them to go through the numbers and hear what they say.
OK, thank you for that, Alex, and we'll watch and wait for the those announcements later. A couple of email questions. Graham in Bushy, in your interview with Piers Morgan, you said both you and the Labour Party have dealt with anti-Semitism. How is this the case with several party members suspended for anti-Semitic acts, then reinstated at the party when you said there would be zero tolerance? Sir Keir.
Well, Nick, I think on anti-Semitism, it's clear that we've taken a very strong, robust approach since I've been leader of the Labour Party. A lot of Jewish communities are now working with us, including doing training and education within the Labour Party, something they weren't willing to do before. Of course, we've got further to go. We take action in all of the cases that are brought to our attention. The sanction, what happens at the end, will depend on each case. But
people have been reinstated, haven't they?
There will be cases that are investigated where it's thought that in relation to what was said, after a period of time, people can be reinstated. I haven't got all those individual cases at my fingertips, but of course that happens. The important thing is, are we gaining the confidence of Jewish communities. I think we are. I know we've got further to go, but I don't think anyone could really put their hand on their heart and say Keir Starmer is not taking anti-Semitism in the Labour Party seriously. I'm taking it very seriously, and we've taken very robust actions.
Now you've had time to pause and reflect on doing life stories with Piers Morgan. Are you glad you did that? And if so, why?
I am glad I did it. It was tough going. The recording of it, obviously it was reduced in the end to about an hour's programme. The recording of it was 3.5 hours non-stop. Me and Piers opposite each other,
Good job you're a barrister.
cameras rolling. And it is a roller coaster. And I am glad I did it. I think it, for better or for worse, it is important for people to see the rounded person that politicians are that I am. And it gave me the chance to talk about some of the things I haven't talked about in the past. And so I am glad I did it. Although it was, I have to say, I was completely knackered at the end of that 3.5 hours.
You were. One last one before we go back to the calls. Rachel in Bexley. Is Scotland right not to take the knee, as they're likely to do later today? They've indicated they're only going to take it against England. Sir Keir.
Rachel, that's a choice for each team. And, Scotland will make that choice. England have taken a different choice. And I respect that. And I profoundly don't think you should boo your own team before kickoff. Here we are. I'm a massive football fan.
I know you are.
Euro 96. I was at pretty well every England game at Wembley. It was fantastic. The whole place was rocking.
Were you there when Gaza missed by a stud?
I was there. Gaza was right in front of me. I was also there when Gaza put it over Henry's head and lashed it in for a goal in the Scotland game. So I love watching England. England playing at Wembley in the Euros. This is your own soil, your own team. Those players with the shirt on, sometimes for the first time for them, young players, you don't boo them before you've even kicked off.
Is it coming home this year, Sir Keir?
I really, really hope so. But I was, when Gascoigne was so close, I thought in 96 it was coming home. But it was.
All right.
But,
that's for a generation. Some of us, of course, listening, they won't even know what we're talking about. So we move on. This is the year. Jacob in Hitchin. Jacob, you're through to Sir Keir. Go ahead. Good morning, Jacob.
Hi, morning, Keir.
Hi, Jacob.
Hi, I'm traditionally a Labour supporter, and at the moment, to be honest, the only real reason I would vote for yourself and for a Labour MP is because you aren't anything to do with the Tory party, and your popularity is obviously kind of at the lowest it was, similar to Jeremy Corbyn. So personally, I'd just like to know, what do you and the Labour Party actually stand for?
Jacob, I'll tell you what I stand for. I stand for coming out this pandemic and building a much better Britain, not going back to where we were when we went in and patching up the old system. And what I mean by that is, look at what the pandemic has thrown up. It's thrown up the underfunding of our health service. We've got to fix that. It's thrown up the way we need to change the economy. Too many people in insecure working. It's thrown up how vulnerable the self-employed and small businesses are. We need to change all of that, Jacob, in a way that isn't just going back to where we started and patching it up. So there's a huge amount of work to do, Jacob. And, the more now we're coming out of restrictions, I feel strongly that I'm going to be in a position to make that argument much more loudly, which is what I intend to do.
Well, Jacob, coming back to you in a moment, I have to tell you that your personal rating now is at -29, which is exactly where Jeremy Corbyn was after 14 months in the job. A poll last night puts the Conservatives up 245 in your party down to 32. And a separate poll shows that you have a favourability rating of -7 among Muslim voters, compared with your party's rating, which is a positive 42. Why don't people like you?
Well, Nick, these polls go up and down, but let me take it on...
Respectfully, they go down and down for you so far.
No, they've gone up and down. But let me take it on the chin.
I don't mean it personally. I just asked you. You're not cutting through.
We've been battling against a pretty strong headwind with the vaccine rollout this year. Has been fantastically successful. All credit to the NHS on the front line. We've had a government that's been paying the wages through furlough of 4.5 million people for a year. That is a pretty steady headwind to be sailing into. In the elections,
calamitous handling of the pandemic, as you point to the borders and things such as that, why haven't you made ground there?
Well, if you look across the country, across Europe as well, governments, incumbent governments, those in power during a pandemic, tend to be supported by the people because people look to their government. So, Nick, there is a steady headwind, but have I got to do more? Yes, you bet I have. Have we got to get out there more? Yes, we have. I'm going to spend the summer on the road in different communities across the country having these conversations. For the first time, I'm going to be able to speak to human beings in a room as myself, with them in a room as the restrictions come off. I haven't done that.
Well, let's hear from Jacob. Jacob, you're the traditional Labour supporter. Your response, if you would, sir?
I think it sounds great, and obviously I think you come across as a good guy, and I think you've got good intentions, but I think the messaging just has to be put forward so much more, because it's always, all we're ever hearing is still about Jeremy Corbyn, and it's almost like Jeremy Corbyn versus Keir Starmer the whole time, and I think people are fed up of it, to be honest.
What do you want to hear from your party leader? Let's do it that way. Just briefly, if you would, Jacob. What would shoot the lights out for you for the Labour Party?
I just want some aspiration, I think, and to be a really positive force going forward. Because, like Nick said, the last 14, 15 months of Tory party, I mean, they've just got away with so many things. It's been a complete disaster, and I'm just concerned that nobody seems to be able to cut through it.
OK, I mean, credit to Keir. I watch him at PMQs. He does try, but maybe there's more work to be done. Jacob, thank you. You talked about the borders. Can I just reference you to events at the weekend, which you may or may not have had sight of, Sir Keir, which was obviously G7 down at Cornwall.
Oh, yeah.
And the various world leaders came in. I mean, would you support something as allowing these people in as regards stricter borders? And it would appear that they had a barbecue that was way in excess of the numbers that you could enjoy in your back garden, I could enjoy in my back garden, but Dominic Raab assures us it was suitably COVID secure. It didn't look like it in the pictures. Sir Keir?
Nick, would I have allowed people in? Yes. I think getting world leaders together is really important, and the single most important thing at the moment is a global agreement on the vaccine rollout across the world, because none of us are going to be safe until all of us are safe. I didn't see that agreement. I saw some words about the agreement, but as an opportunity to do what is the single most important thing now, which is to have a global agreement on the vaccine, yes, I would allow them in. I have to say, the barbecue, the optics of that did not look good. They really didn't look good.
My listeners are furious.
And on the verge, I mean, tonight we're going to hear from the Prime Minister probably saying, alas, that word that always means he's about to tell us that his plan didn't work, and that we're probably in for another 4 weeks of restrictions. I think the optics of that just a few days before were not good, and a lot of people are going to be pretty frustrated, I think, having seen that and then hearing what they're going to hear tonight.
Did they break the rules?
They say they didn't, and I didn't sit and count the individuals, but there's no getting away. The optics matter in these things, and people will watch that. And imagine if your wedding is next week,
yeah.
And we all know what the wedding day is for you, your family, your friends, etc. And you're now going to watch at 5 or 6 o'clock tonight, nervous that your wedding may not go ahead in the way that we're supposed to be going to a wedding in 2 or 3 weeks, and we don't know whether that's going to happen. And in the heart of those people, they would have looked at that and said, that's just one rule for them and another for me, and it's not on.
Jamie in Loughborough, does Sir Keir support the Dons, 150 Dons, who are not giving classes to students at Oriel College in Oxford? This is, of course, as part of the Rhodes Must Fall. The Dons have decided they won't be giving lectures to anyone at Oriel College. Sir Keir?
Oh, have they? I missed that completely, Nick.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. This is the ongoing row about the statue Rhodes Must Fall. And I think a growing number of Dons, I think it was 150, have said that they will not, because they think that it's a racist statue, they want action taken, they won't wait any longer.
Oh, look! Just get on with the job of teaching people and in the environment they're in. I don't know the ins and outs of this, but if it's a continuation of that, then let's get our feet back firmly on the ground and get on with
and teach the students.
Yeah,
many of whom are in massive debt, of course, to get.
Yeah, and they've been through. I mean, the students have been through hell in the last 18 months. Sort of cooped up in flats, 6 at a time. Quite often all of them have got COVID because they've given it to one another. Online lessons. I mean, I did a Zoom with them about 9 months ago, maybe 12 months ago now. And, you had first-year students who were sitting with 5 people they hadn't met until 10 days before we had the Zoom. All of them got COVID because one of them had got it. And they were all having food brought into them and doing their lessons on Zoom. Now, it's got better than that, but I think they have been amongst the hardest hit in the last 18 months.
If I can hold on to you for one more minute, please. I have this question on food. Mark in Sevenoaks, you have a question on sausages. Put your question, if you would, to Sir Keir.
Hi, Mark.
Hi. With the EU taking a hard line on the Northern Ireland Protocol and the prospect of a trade war looking likely, where does Keir stand on this, and what would Labour do to solve the crisis?
Well, Mark, I think it's really important that we just remind the Prime Minister that the agreement he's arguing about is the one he negotiated. Now, either he hadn't read it and he's now complaining about it, but he negotiated it. Either he didn't understand it, or he didn't tell us the truth about it when he said what it had in it. So that's my starting point, Mark. What on earth is the Prime Minister doing, negotiating an agreement that he now says won't work? It wasn't imposed on him. But we've got to make progress. We can't have this standoff, and both sides need to negotiate to find a way forward through this. We've used up 6 months and got nowhere. We need some real progress in the next few weeks.
And the war of words, Sir Keir. Boris Johnson asking Monsieur Macron, how would you like it if French courts stopped you moving Toulouse sausages to Paris, which was later, in the view of Dominic Raab, offensive, as was Mr Macron's response as regards Northern Ireland was offensive.
Yeah, I mean, there's the ins and outs of those comments, but in the end, and I worked in Northern Ireland for 5 years, and I know what it means to both communities that this is resolved, because it matters hugely. The politics and history of Northern Ireland is tied up with these sorts of disputes. The Prime Minister said that there wouldn't be checks, and that's how he sold his deal. He either hadn't read it or he knew perfectly well that wasn't the case. And now, 6 months down the line, he's complaining about the very document that he signed off. Now, that isn't a complete answer, because we've got to find a way through this, but we do need to remind the Prime Minister that he signed on the dotted line. This is what he negotiated. If he's saying it doesn't work, he should look in the mirror and say, well, did I sign something then it wasn't very sensible? But we've got to find a way forward. We need to ensure having checks between Great Britain and Northern Ireland is not the way forward. Having any checks between the Republic and Northern Ireland is absolutely not the way forward. So we need to make some real progress. There's probably going to have to be flexibility on both sides, as ever. But this mess is the one the Prime Minister negotiated and missold.
All right. And lastly, we touched on your popularity. Is it that you're a little bit too woke, Sir Keir Starmer?
Oh, Nick, I've been accused of many things. Look, we've been through restrictions. I feel I've had for 14 months of leadership where I haven't been able to get out there and make the argument.
Are you a woke bloke?
Look, I'm not going to get it. Most people, but I think the latest poll I saw, 90% of people haven't got the first idea what you're talking about when you say woke, and a good thing too. I'm going to make arguments as me on the issues as I see them arising.
Well, it's just as you couldn't quite bring yourself to condemn taking down the portrait of the Queen. You weren't quite sure. You're not going to condemn Scotland football players if they don't take the knee. You talked about the Gender Recognition Act. I don't know. This was, I think, last week. I don't know how well that plays in Hartlepool. Just says, are you a bit too woke for the Labour Party?
Nick, I'm not getting into a discussion about woke or not woke. Most of the people who will be listening to this won't have the first idea what woke means, and a good thing too.
I'll give you an easy one. Score prediction, England-Scotland.
I'm going to go for 2-1 England.
Okay.
And I was there. I'm going on Friday, and I was there for the last England-Scotland game at Wembley. So I'm very much looking forward to that.
Like Gazza's, that'd be in for a treat.
It was amazing, absolutely amazing. That flick over Hendry and then lashing it in.
All right, good seeing you again.
Good.
Enjoy the football when you go. Thank you.
Bye for now.
Sir Keir Starmer appearing here on LBC Where News is next.
Sir Keir Starmer has told LBC a delay to the final unlocking in England would be down to the government's border policy, which he's described as pathetic. The 21st of June lifting of restrictions is expected to be pushed back by 4 weeks due to the Delta variant of COVID first identified in India. The Labour leader says he hopes there will be wriggle room to allow weddings of more than 30 guests to go ahead. Before his announcement on lockdown this evening, Boris Johnson will head to Brussels for the first summit of NATO leaders in 2 years. He's expected to urge the Western alliance to redouble its commitment to collective security.